Every second, our bodies are fighting invisible enemies like bacteria, viruses, while at the same time managing liters of fluid moving through our tissues. But have you ever wondered how our bodies remove excess fluid, transport immune cells, and protect us from infections? Behind this incredible system is what is known as the lymphatic system. So, what exactly is the lymphatic system? Now, this is a network of lymph vessels, lymph nodes, and lymphatic organs such as the spleen and the thymus gland shown there. And these maintain the fluid balance and protect our bodies from infection. So this system quietly keeps our bodies balanced and healthy. In this video, we shall explore the structure of the lymphatic system, how it works, and the important roles it plays in immunity and fluid balance. Let's get into it. So firstly, how does the lymphatic system maintain fluid balance? Now it does this by collecting extra fluid that leaves blood vessels and returns this fluid back to the bloodstream. Allow me to explain, and as I explain, you will also discover how tissue fluid is made. Now when blood is pumped from the heart, it passes along the arteries, then narrow arterioles, and finally even narrower capillaries. And it is in these capillaries that exchange of materials takes place. For example, oxygen and nutrients are given off from the blood to the cells, and these cells give off our wastes and carbon dioxide, making the blood deoxygenated. Now this blood then returns to the veins, to the heart, and eventually to wherever it needs to go to get rid of the carbon dioxide and the wastes. Now back to what I was saying, as the blood is pumped out of the heart, it is pumped at a very high pressure, and therefore the hydrostatic pressure of blood pumped from the heart keeps increasing as it passes through the arteries, arterioles, and eventually capillaries. This is because these blood vessels keep on getting narrower as the blood passes through them. And so by the time the blood reaches the arterial end of the capillaries, the pressure is very high, and therefore this high pressure of blood actually forces the plasma, which is the fluid part of blood, and other small molecules such as nutrients, these include glucose and amino acids and oxygen, to pass through the walls of the capillaries into the intercellular space, forming what is known as tissue fluid. And this tissue fluid allows cells to receive oxygen and nutrients. And so the walls of the capillaries here act as filters which allow plasma and small molecules to pass through them while holding back large components of blood, which include red blood cells, some white blood cells, and other proteins. And since this filtration occurs under intense pressure, it is called it's therefore referred to as ultrafiltration. So due to the loss of the plasma, the pressure of the blood reduces significantly by the time it reaches the venular end. Another factor responsible for the plasma moving out of the capillaries or formation of tissue fluid is osmosis. If you know osmosis, you realize that when the blood is at the arterial end, it contains most of the plasma and therefore has a high water potential compared to the fluid in the intercellular space. And therefore, the plasma moves from a region of high water potential to a region of low water potential in the intercellular space, forming tissue fluid. So since the blood is losing most of its fluid part or the plasma, you realize that the blood in the capillaries becomes more concentrated since it retains large solid molecules and proteins. So by the time the blood reaches the venular end of the capillaries, the blood is very concentrated and therefore has a low water potential compared to the tissue fluid. Now here osmosis once again comes into play. Now because the tissue fluid here has a higher water potential compared to the blood in the capillaries, the tissue fluid, most of it, is reabsorbed directly into the bloodstream through the walls of the capillaries, and this happens at the venular end of the capillary bed. Now I said most, so you realize that not all of the tissue fluid is reabsorbed directly into the bloodstream. The excess tissue fluid drains into tiny lymphatic vesicles and is now referred to as lymph, which is white or milky in appearance. Now if this excess tissue fluid is not taken up by the lymphatic vesicles, it accumulates in the tissues, and this makes the tissues to become swollen, and this condition is known as edema. So that's an example of edema on someone's foot, And trust me, it's not the prettiest thing to look at, especially if it happens to your face. And I'm sure you've seen someone with such feet, but please, not everyone who has such feet is actually having or edema. Some of them just feed well. Anyway, so that alone makes you realize how important our lymphatic system is. So next, I'll explain how the lymphatic system plays a role in immunity. So how does the lymphatic system protect us from infections? So remember when I said excess tissue fluid drains into the lymphatic vessels, forming lymph? Yeah. So that lymph passes through the lymphatic system and eventually joins the bloodstream once again. So along the lymphatic system are lymph nodes, and these are like security checkpoints along the lymphatic highway. So as the lymph passes through the lymph nodes, it is filtered. So here the lymph nodes act as a biological filter. So they clean the lymph before it returns back to the blood. So what happens here is that as the lymph passes through the lymph nodes, these lymph nodes contain immune cells such as lymphocytes, and these recognize bacteria and other foreign particles and therefore produce antibodies against them. So when these antibodies are produced, these act as a recognition site for phagocytes, which later engulf these bacteria and get rid of them. Of white blood cells, and these are made by the bone marrow, and they mature in the thymus gland. So that's why the thymus gland is important to the lymphatic system. It's where lymphocytes mature, and these lymphocytes move around the body through the lymphatic system. So this filtered lymph leaves the lymph nodes and continues this journey through the lymphatic system, and is eventually drained back into the bloodstream through the subclavian veins. And so the lymph mixes with the blood and returns to the general circulatory system through the heart. So although we rarely notice it, the lymphatic system works every moment to keep us alive. So the next time you think about our body's amazing systems, remember the lymphatic system, the invisible protector working behind the scenes. If you enjoyed discovering the science behind the lymphatic system, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Discover Biology for more fascinating explanations into the world of biology and life as we know it. Thank you for watching.